In this video, I want to show you another example of working with layer masks on pixel layers, and also show you a couple of different options and shortcuts and possibilities. I'm going to start with this image of a broken glass window. This is out at Alcatraz. And what I want to do is mask out this center area and let my second layer show through. And you'll see what that is in a second. Now I'm going to go ahead and make my selection first and then add a mask from there. So first of all, we're going to figure out the best way to select this center area. It's good to experiment with your different tools, and also remember that whatever great tool you pick to start with, you're going to have to go ahead and make some adjustments. I thought this might work with the select subject, just the basic select subject, but I have a feeling it might go a little wonky. Let's see what happens. And it says it could not find a subject to select. And that's because this image is fairly busy, it's very similar, so it's really not going to work on that one. Now the other one I could try is the object selection tool. Now if we just go ahead and select that area, we're trying to select that hole. Let's see what happens there. And that is not working so well because it's actually grabbing an area off to the side. It doesn't quite know what I want it to select. So let's actually try that one more time. And I'm going to do it a lot more tightly. And this is one of my pieces of advice about some of these tools. You've got to play around and play to their intelligence and see and sort of tell them what to do. So if I go very, very tight, right to the edges of this hole that I want it to select, you can see it does much better. It's missing a few places here and a little bit up here, but it's pretty good. Still, I think that our best bet with this particular selection is going to go to the quick selection tool and do this, basically semi-manually. So remember that the quick selection tool, which was all we had for a while, but is still one of my favorites, it works by finding edges, but you can use it manually to sort of guide it around the edges that you're looking for. So you start in the middle, and you can see it's doing a much better job of grabbing those areas. Now remember that with all of these selection tools, they're looking for edges, and so you can begin to anticipate where they're going to miss. And in this case, you can see it's right down here where the tonality gets much too similar. That's okay. I really like the selection it's doing up here. It's much more precise, and I can actually work with this in a couple of different ways. Now, one option you have is to go to stay with your quick selection tool, but go to the minus and see if you can just sort of nudge those things there. If there's a little bit of an edge, oftentimes if you work more closely and slowly, you're going to be able to make it work. That's never going to quite get where I want it to be because it actually is so close in tonality. This area I need to do an add. Let's see if I can do it. Nope, it's really going to be stubborn, but I might be able to do it from the other side because it's going to have a better time recognizing the edge this way. Let's see if I can nudge it up. Okay, and I think that's as good as I'm going to get it with any of my automatic tools. Now I'm going to go to my lasso tool. Remember, whenever you need to do stuff like this, zoom in. You want to be able to work more closely. Remember, we're selecting the inside. So if I want to adjust this, I need to go to that minus, either going to minus up here or with a keyboard shortcut of holding your Option key on a Mac. And I'm just going to select that area and select that area, and you can see that's much more precise. This I want to add to the image, so I'm going to just let go of that key, and now I have a very nice selection. I'm pretty pleased with that. Now we're going to get into much more precise adjustments to selections in the next video in this unit, but also in future units. So for right now, we're going to go ahead and accept that. Now, notice that I do not have a layer mask now. I didn't add one to begin with. I just did my selection. And this is a great shortcut to adding layer masks. It can get you into a little bit of confusion, but I'm going to show you how to get out of that. Instead of going all the way up to the menu, which is the slow way, we can go down to this little icon here. It's a little white square with a little black circle in the middle of it. And as I hover over it, you see it says Add Layer Mask. And if I click on it, it does indeed add a layer mask, but unfortunately, it adds it in the opposite way of what I want. This doesn't stress me out too much because I know a shortcut to take it the other way, and that is simply Command I, and that reverses it. I'm going to do that again so you can see. This way, it's masking out the background and leaving the center revealed because it's white in the center. With Command I, you watch it reverse, and the center is masked and the background is revealed. And now you can see the image that I'm planning to put behind there. It's a photograph of a blue-eyed cat. And I like the way it looks already. There are definitely a couple of things I want to adjust, though. It's not placed quite where I want it. So I'm going to click on this bottom layer, go to the Move tool, and I'm going to just move this around a bit to see if I can. I want it on that eye because that eye is so much more dramatic. And that's pretty good, but I feel like it's just not big enough to be dramatic. So I want to show you the Transform tool. We're going to actually get into much more depth with the Transform tool. So I'm just going to show you a couple of short things in this unit. You can get to Transform by going here and to Transform, and we're just going to pick Scale. Now notice I could take this layer off, but I actually want to leave it on. It's going to give me, if I go back to Transform, it's going to give me that box so that I can see exactly how I'm transforming without having to take that other layer off. That's an advantage because I want to be sure that I make this bigger and get it into that masked area in the way that I want it. So all you have to do to make it larger is just drag a corner, and don't worry about it moving because we can just grab it and pull it back. And actually that looks pretty darn good. I'm going to hit the return key, and that is a pretty cool image. I'm pretty happy with it. So the last thing I want to show you is one of the many ways that you are able to actually edit and change the layer mask itself. We'll get into many different ways to do it. We've already learned a little bit about selecting it and changing it a little bit in the layer itself. But now I want to show you another area. What if we wanted to change the opacity of the layer mask? There's many ways to do it, but one way you cannot do it is from here. So notice that if I click on this layer mask here, you would think that maybe if I went to the opacity and took this down, that you would change the opacity of the layer mask. But actually you don't. You change the opacity of the layer. And this is just a way that Photoshop is set up. It doesn't matter which one of these you click on. If you're on the layer, you're changing the opacity of the layer itself, the pixels. If you want to change the opacity of the layer mask, there are a few different ways to do it, but one of the simplest is to click on the layer mask and go over to this tab called Properties. Now, if Properties doesn't show up, you might look around on your tab layer, and you might need to go up to your window and make sure that Properties is checked, which you can see it is right now. So we're on Properties, and Properties gives us a few different options. May or may not be what we want for this image, but let's just go ahead and test them out. One is density. So you can see if I take the density down here, it is actually taking down the density of the mask. I want to come back over here for a second so you can see this. If I hold down the Option key and show you that mask, you can see that the mask is now gray. Let's go back to Properties, and let's go ahead and put the density up, and instead we're going to feather the mask, and we'll go fairly extreme so you can see it's just softening the edges of that, which is kind of an interesting effect here. And again, let's go over to Layers, and you can see that it's actually softened the edge of that mask. So it's softening the way that it's actually masking it out. One other thing that we can do here, I'll go ahead and put the feathering back, is we can invert it. So this is definitely not what we want, but it's just another place where you could invert the mask. And that can come in very handy. In the next video, you're going to learn one of the more sophisticated ways to adjust and to edit your layer mask.